Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is a bunch of Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. Time to join the conversation.
Hey, everybody. How you doing this wonderful Father's Day weekend? Glad to see you guys. Wonderful to be here hosting the show tonight. I apologize for yesterday. Not yesterday, but last week, seeing as how I had to cancel. So that was not good. But this week we're here. We're ready to go. Just a quick reminder, next week I will not be doing the show because I'm going to be going on a camping / backpacking trip instead. So I don't know. I guess somebody else, if they want to be enterprising, can jump in and fill the time slot. All right. I have got to turn the chat sound off over on Gun Channels because that is driving me nuts. There we go. Outstanding. Over in the YouTube side, let's see. Who do we have here? Looks like we got Patrick Pew Pew. He happened to be first. Good to see you. Patriot in the Dark. Early Watch, Michigan. Outstanding. Guess Who? Gizzard Gary. Roosted. Glad to see you guys. Over on Gun Channels, there's quite a few. Looks like, well, we got Clay and Giz and G-Webs, who happens to be on the panel, also rocking it out over there. Speaking of Gun Channels, if you guys are not members of Gun Channels, you probably should be. So you go over there, join. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's pretty much the water cooler of the internet gun community. There's pretty much anything you want to talk about 24/7, 365. You can find it there. Let's go through the panel here today. Night Strike, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Check out guntube.org, where you can upload videos and not worry about corporate politicking. There we go.
All right, outstanding. As always, I'm going to say when it comes to GunTube, I support GunTube via Patreon. You should too. We need to make this platform get off the ground and fly. Matt, how you doing, sir?
I'm Matt from 50 Caliber Carmen. I almost invariably leave this show about 5 to 10 minutes in when I realize that people think I should do things on Friday nights.
Well, that's okay. As I've always said, real life comes first. There are more important things to do than sit here and yak with me.
Okay, I hope to be back in a few minutes, but if I don't worry too much about me. See you guys at Firearms Friday, which, remember, that is tonight. See.
Awesome. All right, we had 2 drop out. G was here. Hopefully he can come back. Squib, how you doing, sir?
Doing all right tonight. How about you?
Same old, same old. It's a wonderful Friday night. Fixing to do the best show on the internet and then go to work.
Wait, you're going to be doing Caliber Corner?
Oh!
Whoa. No, he's not doing Hit or Miss Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock.
The stones on this one. Oh. Oh.
Hey, man, we got a project where we can.
Hey, that's all right. I don't have any problem with it.
Hey, we all get it in spades, so it's your turn today.
Hey, that's okay. I realize how this works. If nobody's messing with you, nobody likes you. So yeah. I'm all good.
Though that's also a double-edged sword. Sometimes, even if they are messing with you, they still don't like you.
Well, that's okay. Doing what I do for a living, I've got a pretty thick skin, I'm used to it.
Yeah, well.
All right.
I appreciate all you do, so don't worry about it.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get this show on the road, fellas. Got a lot to talk about. First thing we're going to talk about this week is a piece by A.W.R. Hawkins in Breitbart. Democrats push licensing, registration of semi-automatic handguns and rifles. Democrats in the House and Senate are pushing firearm licensing and registration requirements. The push is contained in legislation titled Blair Holt Firearm Owner Licensing and Record of Sale Act of 2018. It's being sponsored by Representative Bobby Rush, Democrat from Illinois, and Senator Tammy Duckworth, Democrat from Illinois. Gee, go figure on both of those. The text of the legislation says to provide for the implementation of a system of licensing for purchasers of certain firearms and for a record of sale system for those firearms and for other purposes. The phrase certain firearms refers to a handgun or a semi-automatic rifle that is capable of accepting a detachable ammunition feeding device, which is all of them pretty much, except for like a Marlin Model 60. I guess that one would be exempt since it's a tube fed. The legislation defines...
Don't count on it.
Yeah, they'll figure out a way, I guess. Yeah, somebody will invent something to make a feeding device to go to more rapidly load that, and they'll consider that a detachable magazine, and they'll ban it. The legislation defines an ammunition feeding device as a device capable of being detached from a semi-automatic rifle and has a capacity of, or that can be readily restored or converted to accept, more than 10 rounds of ammunition. In order to legally possess semi-automatic handguns or rifles, a citizen would have to possess a firearm owner license or a state firearm license. Exemptions to the requirements include a federal employee who is required to carry a qualifying firearm in the capacity of that individual as a federal employee while engaged in the performance of official duties. In other words, the Capitol Police or other security personnel who protect Congress would not have to submit to the requirement placed upon commoners. And I guess maybe
excuse my language, but didn't these Illinois jackholes learn already? Didn't they try this with the manufacturers in Illinois already? Why are they trying this in like the Senate now?
Because they are control freak jackwagons who, want to make everybody else subjects and not citizens. And basically, it sounds like they want to make the United States into Illinois. And I say hell no on that one.
Hey, these law enforcement people that are exempt, is that strictly when they're on the dance floor, or is it while they're guarding our politicians?
Yeah, I think...
Well, I don't trust them on the dance floor, I tell you.
Maybe if the rest of us can do backflips and shoot people, then we could be exempt too.
Actually, he got arrested.
Yeah, I know. I think that's great.
So
finally, some accountability in the FBI, right?
No, not at all. That's a whole nother story we can talk about.
Yeah, no kidding. Looks like we had some more people join us out there. Too Hottie, Ozark Yeoman, John Brown Productions, Vanessa Kitty, Logic Rex. Good to see you guys. So yeah, it doesn't shock me that these two are Democrats, because I think just about every gun control measure that has ever come across has been pushed by the Dems. And number two, that they're from Illinois. Yeah, so they want to do to the rest of us what they've done to their own subjects. Russ Carr says, yeah, but I can't do a tactical backflip. Tactical backflip, that's awesome. I hadn't heard that one yet. In other news, Google is stepping up their game. Revealed Google banning AdWords like gun grips, scopes, and sights. This is from June 11th in Breitbart. Google will be adding words like gun grips and scopes and sights to its list of prohibited AdWords later this month. The search engine will also be banning any AdWords that deal with the, quote, 3D printing of guns or gun parts. This will include instructions on 3D printing of firearm parts. Google announced these new changes in an email, the subject line of which reads, Google AdWords policy update, change to dangerous products or services policy. Breitbart possesses the email, which provides a non-exhaustive list of examples of products for which ads will no longer be allowed. Those include stocks, conversion kits, scopes and sights, tripods and bipods, gun grips, gun making instructions, software, or equipment for 3D printing of guns or gun parts. Google's AdWord policy changes come just months after YouTube announced it was banning all gun demonstration videos, which is not necessarily factually accurate, and follows Facebook's incremental prohibitions on gun ads and sales. Second Amendment Foundation Executive Director Alan Gottlieb spoke to Breitbart News about this backdoor gun control, saying the Google war on guns is a direct attack on gun ownership. Maybe it's time to regulate the internet giants like Google, Facebook, and YouTube, and not gun ownership. Logic Rex says, I was wondering if I read that right. Google banning words now. Awesome. Stocks. WTF. Yeah. I mean, they are, you know, it seems to me that, well, if you control the flow of information, you control the public discussion. And Google, being the largest search engine ever and an internet giant, is pretty far towards controlling the flow of information. So with them banning advertisements for these legal products, it certainly decreases your access to these products. Not necessarily decreases your access, but it takes them further out of the public eye, which makes it more difficult for you to find them, for you to get them, for you to keep, I don't know, I guess for you to keep them in as I said, just keep them in the public eye. And I think that's what they want. You know, it is another tentacle in their strategy. And by they, I mean the left, the liberal left, in their strategy of gun control. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Squib, Nitrate, hello.
I'm here, but I don't have too many. I mean, in any government regulation on anything, especially private sector, but any of it, it'll just make things worse.
Yeah, and that's a point to consider. You know, is government regulation of these internet companies the solution? Because where does that go? I mean, is that a cure that's worse than a disease? You know, on the one hand, you have Google trying to put a chokehold on a legal activity and on legal products and a legal industry, but on the other, do we let the government put a chokehold on Google's private business activities? I'm, you know, just because we happen to be sympathetic to the cause of the people that Google is trying to restrict, does that mean that it's right to restrict Google's ability to restrict that in their own private environment?
So think of it like this. Let's say Google was owned by the federal government. Free internet for everybody. Free internet, search engine, whatever you want to call it. It was as big as it is, as popular as it is, as effective, but it was totally owned by the government. It was paid for by our tax dollars or by whatever revenue the government was able to get out of owning it and regulating it. And they started banning anything, these keywords, whatever. At that point, now you can invoke the First Amendment because it's about the government restricting, right?
Yeah.
But Google isn't owned by the federal government. It isn't paid for with our tax dollars. It isn't regulated by a federal entity per se. I mean, you might have some FCC stuff in there or whatever, but that's a whole different reason thing, whatever. So,
but again, there's precedent with that because of you saw how Ted Cruz grilled Facebook for having a platform, but not allowing certain sides or individuals of a certain political leaning to speak. And
but that's where capitalists like you come into play, right? The whole necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
I understand something big like Facebook or Google would be hard to topple or compete with. But the simple fact is that we're a capitalist society and we're a free country. So there can be entrepreneurs out there that can compete, and people can say to hell with Facebook if they want to restrict me and they want to push their narrative. To hell with Google if they want to restrict me and push their narrative. To hell with YouTube if they want to restrict me and push their narrative. Right. The thing is, that's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. These things are not overnight. So,
I think that Yankee actually has like the right idea on this one. The internet is a public utility. And so anybody using the internet until they establish their own internet should have to abide by the fact that they're using a public utility. Same way you'd have to, it doesn't matter if you're stopping at a business, if it's on a public road, then that's public, and they got to treat it like a public thing.
Yeah, but businesses are allowed to have their own privacy policy in terms of service. And under this, unfortunately, with some businesses like, Google and YouTube, they have their terms of service can dictate what they can and can't, what they will and not allow. And as Squib said, if they don't allow this, then yeah, they may get hit. They may get brought up in the in front of the Senate for having a platform, but only letting certain individuals to speak, just like Facebook got. But again, since we are a capitalist society, that does mean that anybody can go out there and make their own platform, get funding for it, and run it, and do the same thing Google or YouTube or Facebook is doing. And if they're successful, they're successful. If they're not, well, they're not. But again, Google and YouTube and even Facebook, they've got a monopoly on the system right now, unfortunately. There are other platforms out there, but none are as big or as easy to use as those.
Well, yeah, it's like, when's the last time you heard somebody say, hey, I can't figure this out, why don't we Bing it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Bing, Yahoo, any of the other ones that are out there are second string at best.
Yahoo's been around longer than Google. It's been around since like the mid-90s. So I know I use Yahoo when I don't want to use Google.
Yeah, I still have a Yahoo.
It's been around, but
that's primary.
It's been around longer, but they aren't as successful because they didn't run their business as well. Their business model, they didn't have I mean, if you've been in the game the longest, you should have the best opportunity to succeed. But when somebody newer than you is doing a heck of a lot better, what does that say about how you've mismanaged your company?
Well, sure, you have the opportunity to do better, but you also have all those opportunities to start stagnating and get set in your ways. You're like, oh, this has been working for however long. I guess this is just what we do forever.
And here's another thing to consider. And it's a point brought up by Tina is Liberty Cat. What happens if Democrats take control and arrest quote-unquote Nazis for hate speech? In other words, it's all well and good to have the government step in and regulate in favor of something we support, i.e. stopping this ridiculous move on Google's part to restrict ads from certain companies featuring certain products. But what happens because then we set the precedent for when the pendulum swings the other way and the liberals are in charge, well, then they get to regulate for the things that they don't like. And then that just leaves us up the creek without a paddle because we've already set the precedent that they could do it. So I'm leaning towards the school of thought that says government should stay out of it and just let the market correct itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most democratic. I understand we're a republic. It's probably the most democratic thing when you let the market dictate the outcome, right? People vote with their wallets, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And that's the problem is.
That being said, everybody go to guntube.org.
Absolutely right. Go to GunTube.
And check out the GunTube menu bar and buy a shirt at the GunTube store. Check out GunTube's Patreon or donate some money via PayPal to help me get this thing off the ground. Because right now, I've got all my money invested into it. I don't have anything to put further to make it better. So,
okay, so here's a question about that real quick while we're on the subject. Do your Night Strike funds, is that like a separate Patreon from your GunTube?
GunTube Patreon is its own thing.
Now, do your Night Strike funds go into there? You know what? Never mind. Sorry, that's your business.
Sometimes they do, unfortunately, because I have to pay for the server and the bandwidth. Because, believe it or not, a video hosting website uses a shit ton of bandwidth.
Really?
Yeah. Who knew, right?
That just sounds outrageously insane.
I know. Who would have knew? Who would have known? But it does. But again, I've upped the bandwidth on my server, so I should be good for a little while now.
Good. Well, you know, Google is launching their backdoor effort at gun control, but they're not the only ones.
Oh, no, they're not.
No, Intuit has launched their own, if you guys haven't heard about this.
I have.
Credit service shuts down payments on all gun purchases by Lois Weiss from June 11, 2018 in, I believe this is the New York Post. Intuit agrees to reimburse firearm facility after cutting credit service. Several gun-related businesses were suddenly, and without warning, disrupted in recent weeks when Intuit stopped processing credit card payments because phone and internet sales were gun-related, the Post has learned. Some of the payments stopped didn't even involve firearms, but simply T-shirts and coffee mugs and gun safety classes, according to small business owners. As a result, the businesses had to scramble to track down customers to get them to pay their bills after Intuit credited back to customers' accounts the purchases, even if the T-shirt was already shipped or the class already taken, one businessman told the Post. Excuse me. At Gunsight Academy, a Paulden, Arizona company that provides marksmanship training in addition to selling guns that ship to a licensed gun shop near the customer's home, Ken Campbell was dinged by Intuit's action. Campbell, a former Indiana sheriff, had just switched credit card processors this spring to Intuit, the parent of TurboTax and Quicken Software, when the trouble began, he said. Intuit told Campbell it mistakenly believed firearm sales were being made directly to the customers, which it requires for such items. Campbell explained the guns were shipped to a local dealer with a federal firearms license who ran the required background checks. Intuit was unmoved. Campbell said if he knew of Intuit's stance, he would simply move back to his previous processor. It's fine, it's capitalism, and if you don't want to do business with us, we don't want to do business with you, he said. Intuit did not return several requests for comment prior to deadline. It later stated, as an American company, we respect the U.S. Constitution and all the rights contained in it. For these transactions, our bank partner requires them to be done face-to-face. Our policy today requires the customer to be present to swipe their credit card. That would mean, for instance, that it would process firearm sale at a store, but not if the credit card was keyed in through internet or over the phone. Honor Defense, the Georgia firearms maker that ships only to other dealers, had a similar experience with Intuit. Gary Ramey, president of Honor Defense, told Gun Talk radio host Tom Gresham that Intuit reversed charges on his customers as well. So, there you have yet another instance of a company, and this is nothing new, it's been going on for a while, but of yet another company trying to do a backdoor gun control by refusing to do business with other companies that are legally doing business. I find it strange that people are putting their politics ahead of business, and it just strikes me as odd.
I hate to say this, and I think Intuit may get in some trouble for this because I believe what it's doing is a violation of the Commerce Clause.
Please expand on that.
It has to do with interstate transactions.
That doesn't make it any clearer.
It doesn't, but again, it's the Commerce Clause is ridiculously long, and I don't want to read it right now.
Okay, can you give us a Cliff Notes version?
It talks about the individual's right to commerce as well as a business's right. But
Thank you.
But I believe it does state in there that a business may not violate an individual's right.
That makes sense.
It also says that the state or the government cannot violate either a business or individual's right to commerce.
Okay.
I'd like to bring up two things. First, they're talking about you being present, physically present to sign at the point of transaction. Well, if you have something shipped from another state to your FFL, but you pay for it online with a credit card, you're not there when the monetary transaction is taking place. But you are there, and you do sign when you do the 4473, and the FFL transfers a firearm to you if you pass the background check. There's no state where you walk in there after having something UPS'd to your gun shop where they go, oh, you bought it out of state, you're good. Every FFL has to do a background check on you, whether they go through the state or through the federal, whatever. That's state to state, but you have to have a check done when you've had this, because it's being transferred from the FFL. If you give your gun to the FFL to fix and they give it back to you, they're actually transferring it back to you. And under the right circumstances, you're supposed to do a 4473. So you really are physically there at the point of transfer. It's just not the monetary transfer; it's the physical transfer or transaction, right? So I'm thinking that they're kind of ignorant of how firearms laws work. A lot of people think that you can just go online, buy a gun with a credit card, and it's going to get shipped in a box to your front door, like it's Amazon, and that's not the case. Has been the case since, what, 68, right?
Squib, I have to disagree with you. I think that this argument has been had over and over and over again enough times that they're fully aware of what's going on. I think, and particularly someone who deals in e-commerce like Intuit does, I think it's simply a deliberate method of squashing internet gun sales. That's what it is. That's all it is.
Oh, it might be the company putting its politics on its customers. But I'm just saying, there are so many, air quotes, educated people out there. We're talking about people with PhDs, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, business owners, educators, politicians, successful people that they do not know. And they're smart enough to run a business, make money, get a degree, whatever it is, but they're too lazy, ignorant, biased, or whatever to ask, to look up these laws, to Google. Heaven forbid we use Google. Google it.
Well, you're talking about...
I do think some of that was. I'm not trying to defend them. I'm just saying that whether they're anti-gun or not, some of their educated people that make these policies might still believe that you can order a gun through the mail. And I mean, think about how many people out there have all these misconceptions about the law that we know better. The other thing I'd like to bring up is that in Colorado they made recreational marijuana legal, but you can't buy it with a credit card. Why can't you buy it with a credit card? It's cash only, because these credit cards are managed by the banks, and the banks don't want to do anything to encourage violating a federal law, even though recreational marijuana is federally illegal. The state of Colorado said, we're going to make it legal. Now, the federal government should be flying in there going, you can't do this, but just like all these states that violate the Second Amendment, the federal government doesn't do anything. On the flip side, the federal government's like, we're not messing with this. So it's recreation, you can get it, but you have to buy it cash only, because these banks don't want to risk any trouble with the federal government for allowing these transactions to go through. Now, in this case, Intuit is blocking all this stuff because they don't feel that guns are a moral thing, a legal thing, whatever it is. But in actuality, they're doing the opposite of what these banks are doing by refusing to process pot transactions. Guns are not illegal. Intuit is actually blocking a legal sale. When somebody says, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, is there a law against this? Is this illegal on a federal level, state level? Does it violate? No, we just don't. So if the credit card companies were saying, we're not going to process marijuana transactions in Colorado because we just don't feel that doing drugs is a moral thing to do, then it would be the same thing. But the reason they're staying out of that is because it's still against federal law. So Intuit isn't even looking at this from the standpoint of, are we allowing something to happen that violates the law? Nothing that they're trying to block violates any law. So they don't even have a leg to stand on there. You got to look at both sides of it, and no matter what the reason, or it's just not the right thing to do.
Yep, absolutely right. I think they're stupid for doing this, but again, it's a case of the market has to correct it. And as other people have brought up, Intuit is a really large company that in certain aspects has pretty much cornered the market. I mean, TurboTax. I use TurboTax every year, man, and that's owned by Intuit. Quicken, QuickBooks, all that stuff, man.
My family runs a tax preparation business, and unfortunately, because the best software out there on the market is Intuit, we use Intuit, unfortunately. And the problem with that is there's no other software that does it as well for those that do tax preparation than Intuit software.
Yeah.
So, so people are stuck using Intuit, unfortunately.
Yep. And that until someone invents a better mousetrap, I don't see that changing.
No, unfortunately.
Now, do you guys have to pay like Intuit a straight like a license fee one-time thing, or is it per transaction?
It's a yearly license fee for the software because you have to get each year individually.
Right. So the way I see it is the best way you can stick it to them is to do more business when you're only paying them the same amount. So just be better.
All right. Well, here's another story. We touched on this some time ago, about a month, maybe two ago, about when Boulder City Council was considering putting a referendum on their ballots to let the public vote on having a assault weapons ban. But when one of the councilmen went past a protest about this, a pro-gun protest, they decided to not leave it in the hands of the voters, but instead do it themselves. Well, that's what they ended up doing. They ended up passing the ban itself on their own instead of putting it to the voters like they had originally intended to do. In response, Colorado's NRA affiliate sues Boulder in bid to block assault weapon ban by John Bear from the Daily Camera. This was posted yesterday, the 14th, and updated today. Colorado affiliate of the National Rifle Association sued Boulder on Thursday in an effort to prevent the city from enforcing its assault weapon ban that takes effect Friday. Attorneys for the Colorado State Shooting Association, Boulder-based Gun Sport of Colorado, and two private citizens, James Michael Jones and Robert Lynn Chambers, argue the Boulder ordinance is invalid because sections of it conflict with state law. Members of Moms Demand Action hug after the Boulder City Council unanimously passed the ban on assault weapons during a meeting in May. Opponents of the ban filed a lawsuit Thursday against the city saying sections of the ban conflict with Colorado statutes. The complaint specifically cites 3 sections of the ordinance that clash with Colorado state statutes. Those are the requirement that owners of banned weapons receive a certificate from the city proving ownership, the prohibition of the sale and possession of weapons by people under 21, and the prohibition on the open carry of rifles and shotguns. Denver attorney Richard Westfall, who is representing the plaintiffs, confirmed via email that the suit was filed Thursday. A Boulder spokesman didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Gunsport and Jones couldn't immediately be reached for comment, and when reached by phone on Thursday, Chambers declined to comment. The NRA voiced support for the lawsuit in a news release. The release did not expressly state that the Colorado Association is an official affiliate of the NRA, but included a comment from Anthony Fabian, the state association's executive director. We will not stand by and allow the misguided gun control extremists on the city council to strip us of our rights, he said. We are grateful for the NRA's support of our lawsuit and look forward to restoring the rights of Boulder's law-abiding citizens. The suit comes about a month after another was filed in federal court less than 24 hours after the Boulder City Council unanimously passed the ordinance. The federal lawsuit claims the ordinance violates the plaintiff's constitutional rights. Boulder City Council member Jill Adler-Grano first suggested the ordinance in February after the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, that left 17 people dead. Opponents of the ordinance have organized several pro-gun rallies in Boulder and other cities along the Front Range, during which many participants have openly carried weapons that will become illegal in Boulder on Friday. At a demonstration last week, police passed out pamphlets detailing an existing Boulder ordinance that prohibits the open carry of firearms that aren't in holsters or some kind of case, but issued no citations. A violation of the new ordinance would result in sentences of up to 90 days in jail and fines of up to $1,000, though the Boulder officials have acknowledged that it will be difficult to enforce. It bans certain pistols and semi-automatic rifles with pistol grips, a folding or telescoping stock, or any protruding grip that allows a weapon to be stabilized with the non-trigger hand. So once again, a locality takes action that is in violation of their state's laws and does it anyway. Why? Because they don't give a damn. Because there will be no accountability for them individually, because the money that is going to be expended defending against the lawsuit that is rightfully filed doesn't come out of their pockets. So why the hell not? Why not throw it against the wall and see if it'll stick? Hopefully, this lawsuit gains traction, and the court that has jurisdiction over this will side with the cause of liberty, but who knows? It's hard to say.
The Second Amendment's primary purpose is to be a deterrent and hopefully never a means to end a tyrannical government. So when our government, at whatever level, decides to violate the law, whether it be the U.S. Constitution all the way down to a township ordinance, to get their way, you might not call them tyrannical because there's not blood spilling in the street like it's North Korea, but it's almost to the point where it's a government out of control. It's a government that does what it wants. It's once if they're willing to do that, if left unchecked long enough, they would get to a point where there would be, some of these things that people talk about as far as like what happened in the end of times and stuff, with camps and a monarchy, a dictatorship, whatever, just all this stuff that's sort of fantasy, but there's some plausibility in it. So
absolutely.
It's interesting that they would break the laws that they were sworn to uphold in order to take away the only thing we have to deter them from doing that, or stop them if things like this didn't get questioned. If the checks and balances went away and it was to hell with it, we're just going to do whatever we want. Because today it's ban guns. Tomorrow it's, think of any of these things they do in some of these third world countries. Tell you how many kids you could have. Tell you what religion you can be. Whatever it is, right? Tell you that, your oldest son is going to go away and be a martyr for the cause. Whatever it is. I understand. This is the United States of America. That stuff is not overnight. It's something that probably just won't happen here. But the reason it couldn't happen overnight, or it probably won't ever happen here, is because we have the right to bear arms. So you would think that would be logically, if the government did want to try to gain our confidence in them, the Second Amendment and everything related to that would be the last thing that they would mess with in order to go, see, we really are the good guys.
Well, the thing is, they are well aware that they have to do away with our ability to resist in order to subjugate us. I mean, that's just it. And I firmly believe that long term, that's the whole reason they want to do away with the Second Amendment.
Right, but for the people that are saying that's not what they're doing, they're thinking of public safety, the children, whatever. It's like, do you not see what they're really doing? And I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists. The government's out to get us, but just
those people are delusional at best and liars at worst.
Okay, if you don't want to get accused of cheating, don't go to the bar. Don't not be accounted for wherever you're at when you're not at home. Don't be hiding your email passwords from your wife. Don't be doing anything suspicious, and you can't ever be accused of cheating. So the same thing, if you're the government, don't try to restrict ownership of weapons by the law-abiding citizens if you don't want to get accused of having some sort of ulterior motive, some end game. If you don't want to be accused of, it's the same difference.
The saying goes, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Well, let me tell you, they're walking and quacking. That's how I see it. And when you talk about government overreach and government gone wild, there's a story I have here that segues right into that. And this is out of California. It's a piece by Breitbart from June 12th. Farmer's home raided, guns confiscated after trying to comply with California gun control. Farmer Jeffrey Scott Kirschenman tried to register an AR-15 with the state per California's latest assault weapons ban requirements and ended up having his home raided, firearms confiscated, and faces 12 felony counts. Kirschenman was trying to comply with the June 30th, 2018 deadline to register all assault weapons in the state and became snared by the flurry of laws instituted by California Democrats over the past few years. KGET reports that Kirschenman tried to register a firearm online, and that firearm allegedly turned out to be illegally modified in light of recent laws. As a result, his home in Northwest Bakersfield was raided and a dozen guns, 230 rounds of ammunition, and 2 silencers were seized. Kirschenman was arraigned on 12 charges at the state level and released on a $150,000 bond. The NRA-ILA observes, many gun owners are already reluctant to comply with registration laws, as such schemes are quite accurately viewed as a means to facilitate firearms confiscation. Moreover, Kirschenman wasn't alone in his alleged failure to conform to Sacramento's mandates. As history shows, when faced with California's increasingly onerous and Byzantine gun laws, many decent folks have unwittingly broken the law, ignored new restrictions, or opted for civil disobedience. KGET quoted retired Kern County Sheriff's Office Commander Joe Pilkington saying, "Just in the last few years, there have been lots of changes in gun laws. Making an effort, a good faith effort, to comply with these really complicated laws should count for something." Pilkington noted that Kirschenman's experience is a reminder that state residents who have questions about registering their guns ought to go through an FFL instead of the California Department of Justice website, because they will bone you at the first opportunity.
Oh, yeah, the DOJ hates you here. They hate us. They hate guns. They hate thoughts of freedom. They hate people trying to get their CCWs. They hate our sheriffs. They hate our police. Honestly. DOJ hates everybody.
Wow. And that's coming from a Californian, folks. This is why elections matter. This is why being politically aware and involved in politics at your local level, at your state level, and at the federal level is so important, so critically important. It can't be stressed enough how important it is, because elections have consequences. The saying goes that you get the government you deserve. And what that means is that you get the government you voted for. And Californians, unfortunately, pay the price for the voting habits of those that live in their major cities who rule the rest of the countryside. And they get this. You try to comply with the law, and you end up being a felon. You try to comply with the law and save yourself from becoming that felon and having to be out $150,000 on a bond, having to not get your legally acquired property confiscated, by these illegal ex post facto laws, and you get boned because you may be ignorant of the complicated schemes that they've put in place. And you find out that you violated something unintentionally while trying to comply with the law, and you're hosed. So this is why organizations like the Second Amendment Foundation, who fight these unconstitutional and unjust laws, are so important. And yeah, I guess I'm kind of a SAF fanboy. I am a big fan of the work that they do. Anyone who's listened to the show will be able to tell you that. But again, in today's day and age, I can't tell you how important, how critical I think it is that we support, and not only support one time, but continue to support organizations like the Second Amendment Foundation. Yeah, the NRA, sure, they're the 800-pound gorilla. We don't always agree with everything they do. I think their legislative arm is a joke, but I think that their safety and training arm is great and valuable. Gun Owners of America, they're great at being the rabble rouser for the base and getting the base excited, and letter writing campaigns and petitions and all that. I mean, look at the good work they've done with the bump stock regulations and getting comments out to those. I think that's a lot of good work that they've done. A lot of the comments in the Federal Register are stemming from their efforts. Our state and local organizations are real important in trying to affect state and local politics. But I think that the Second Amendment Foundation in particular, in fighting all of these laws in court, is just crucial to us. I've met Alan Gottlieb. Those of you who saw the video I did from the USCCA Expo, he's a great guy, real humble gentleman, but he works tirelessly to help us, for you. So we should support him. We should help him help us. That's why I became a life member of the Second Amendment Foundation, and I think that everybody should become at least a yearly member. It's what, $15 a year? So you don't go to McDonald's 2 or 3 times. There you go. And you've helped them trying to save your rights for you and future generations. For instance, they I don't know if any of you guys have heard about this or not, but they have recently secured an injunction against enforcement of Deerfield Park's ban on assault weapons. That ridiculously horrible and unconstitutional ordinance by a village council that banned assault weapons and provided for illegal search and seizure of firearm owners' homes, and search of their homes and seizure of their property, plus $1,000 a day fine for non-compliance. They stopped that. They filed suit within 36 hours of that and stopped it. So, I think that, going with the theme that we've had here over the last couple segments of government gone out of control and what you do about it, well, this is what you do about it. You help, you support the organizations that are actively fighting to support your rights. Okay, I'll climb down off my soapbox, but that's, I every once in a while I have to go off on that rant because the Second Amendment Foundation is so important.
No, that really wasn't that much of a rant.
Oh, why, thank you. I tried not to be, but I as I've said, I think the Second Amendment Foundation is so important, and we have to support them because they are really the ones in the trenches fighting for our rights, day by day by day. Every time these local and state governments do this garbage, they're the ones fighting it. In the chat, they're talking about California and how they keep voting these liberal idiots in.
Well,
and
I think a lot of that
there to split California into some separate states. I hope that gets traction.
Well, yeah, that would be delightful. I would love to be split into the actual, good California, and all those loonies in Frisco and Los Angeles did their own thing. Now, see, the problem I see is that a lot of people on our side of the issue, the pro-guns people, are also more leaning towards libertarian values, which is, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. We'll just do our own thing. Whereas progressives tend to like, say, adding more control over you. They're the ones who say, hey, we should ban this because I don't like it.
Yep.
And so they'll be the ones who are more likely to vote because they're like,
I don't like it, you shouldn't have it.
That's exactly it. They're like, I need to have a hand in controlling what you do. Whereas on our side, we're a lot more, well, you know, let it be. You know, I'll do my thing, you do your thing. And so we tend to show up for voting. And even if we were a larger group, we would show up in smaller numbers because we don't feel like we need to be interfering with their business. Whereas it's not true of them.
I understand that, but it becomes critical for those of us who do care about this to try and awaken, maybe?
Get woke.
Yeah, well, try to awaken the rest of them. You know, that we need to get these people who's, you know, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to, you know, tell other people what to do. No, we need to get you involved. We need to get you not telling other people what to do, but preventing them from telling everybody else what to do. Mad Sexy 45 ACP says, do budget read comments? Yeah, I read comments. If I shut my yap long enough to look over at the chat, yes.
Oh yeah, you don't need to read anything by Mad Sexy. He's just out there to troll. That's not true. I was just trolling Mad Sexy. I love you, dude. You're my best fan.
But yeah, you know, it behooves us to try to get everybody involved that we can to increase voter turnout on these. That's why it's so important to have, you know, even my minuscule show, like right now I have 20 viewers out, and usually I'll get about somewhere between 150 to 200 on a replay. You know, that's still 150 to 200 people that the message is getting out to. If all the rest of us do this, everybody that can get on a microphone gets on a microphone, and we spread this out. You know, I've said before, you know, we don't have the giant billionaires who can reach hundreds of thousands of millions of people and with one fell swoop. We have all of us little guys, but if you take enough little guys, you know, you can add up to that one big guy. And that's what we need to do. That's why it's so important that we get out there, spread our message, and open our mouths and be heard.
Well, people contribute in different ways too. I mean, some people are out there getting the word out, talking about what's going on in the industry or with laws or things like that. Some people just donate money. They don't want to get off the couch, but they got money to burn, and we don't. So hey,
that's good too.
You got other people that maybe they aren't as involved in the politics, but they're still gun people, and maybe they're the ones that are teaching their kids or their grandkids about guns, and maybe because they get into guns, they get their family into it later on, or they get into politics or things like that. There's different ways to contribute. I mean, ideally, if we were all part of at least one organization, state or federal, if we were all voting, if we were all trying to stay in the know, if we were all trying to get out there and show other people, hey, these things aren't as scary as you think, or trying to explain things, get rid of all these myths, and not necessarily convert people into, but just showing them, hey, look, you know, you trust me, and this is what I do, so I'm not a bad guy. Not everybody who's into this is a bad guy. There's a reason, there's a Second Amendment, stuff like that. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. Your way is to reach the masses through your channel, and that's a great way to do it. And it's part of the whole big picture. But not everybody who owns a gun is pro 2A, unfortunately. So that's a whole nother battle.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Everybody doesn't necessarily have to, you know, jump up on the soapbox and open their yap like I do. However, I think that we need to get everybody involved in whatever capacity they can. And because this has to be unfortunately for our side, we don't have the wherewithal to make this an AstroTurf operation like the antis do. We must be grassroots. So we need to plant as many seeds as we can. I want to take a second to welcome MW out there, MW Tactical. I think this is the first time I've seen you in this show. So welcome. I hope you enjoyed, even though it looks like you came in a little bit late because we're almost ready to go. But thanks for stopping by. Speaking of almost ready to go, I always wrap this up with a self-defense shout out. So I have two of them for us today. The first one is out of Las Vegas. Homeowner shoots, kills intruder at home near Sahara in Maryland, written by Joe Nelson from Fox 5 in Las Vegas. Police said a Valley homeowner shot and killed a man attempting to break in. There was a lot of police activity, neighbor Oscar Rodriguez said. Police said 2 suspects jumped the wall to gain access to a home along the 2800 block of La Canada Street. One of the suspects used a pry bar to try and open the home's backsliding window, according to police. When the homeowner saw the suspects, he grabbed a gun and opened fire. Shooting him in the foot would have been a better idea, neighbor Elizabeth Cannon said. He has the right to defend his property, but not in the way of murdering someone. First off, Elizabeth, you're a moron. You never try to shoot somebody to wound. You never try to shoot somebody in the foot. You are responsible for every bullet that goes out your muzzle. And the best way to stop someone is to shoot center of mass. If they happen to expire from that, well, that's just the consequences of their actions. And second, defending yourself from someone is not murder, is never murder. As I said, Elizabeth, you are a moron. If he felt he was in danger, I guess he has the right to shoot, Rodriguez said, but I would shoot him in the leg to keep him alive and then call police. Mr. Rodriguez, you too join Elizabeth in being a moron. According to police, both suspects tried to get away, but the suspect who was hit by gunfire collapsed in the roadway and was pronounced dead at Sunrise Hospital. As of Wednesday afternoon, the second suspect was not in custody. Police said they're sending the case to the district attorney's office for review, but do not expect the homeowner to face charges. Police said the burglary victim called 911 to report what happened and was cooperative with officers. Police did not identify the man who was killed. Well, at least this piece doesn't identify the man who was killed or his accomplice as the victims of a shooting either, because they're not.
Okay,
the
where
the homeowner?
What is the source for this story? I'm just curious because they seem to be leaning towards,
Fox 5 in Las Vegas.
Well, that's weird. Why would they bring forward these random neighbors, opinions on it?
To try to insert the agenda into the story.
Well, yeah, but I mean, isn't Fox yeah?
Apparently not everyone. Yeah, this is part of the problem we have as gun owners and as proponents of self-defense is the belief by the uneducated and foolish that you should only shoot the wound. This as the Elizabeth said, that killing someone in self-defense is murder. That's not murder. That's self-defense. Whenever gun statistics and gun crime and gun death statistics are compiled, they throw in the justifiable homicides with the murders and the street crimes and etc. And that shouldn't happen. Justifiable is justifiable in my opinion, but that's another show entirely. One more self-defense shout out. Alleged robber tries to carjack 2 vehicles, faces gun both times. This is from Florida. This is a piece by AWR Hawkins and Breitbart. Police in Jacksonville, Florida say 36-year-old Christopher Raymond Hill tried to carjack 2 vehicles and was stopped both times when the drivers of both vehicles pulled a gun on him. Hill was allegedly armed with a knife. WSVN reports that Hill robbed a Walmart liquor store and ran into the parking lot only to find that his getaway vehicle would not start. So he allegedly tried to carjack Scott Reardon at knife point while slashing at Reardon with the blade. Reardon responded by pulling a gun, and Hill fled toward a Starbucks, jumping into the passenger seat of a car driven by a female. Police indicated the woman jumped out of her vehicle, retrieved her firearm from the trunk, and pointed it at Hill, who then fled to Supercuts and hid in the bathroom. He was soon apprehended. Reardon talked about how happy he was to be armed when confronted by the alleged carjacker, saying, "These guys can talk about banning assault rifles and banning guns, but when it comes and happens to them, they're going to wish they had one." So there's another happy ending story, another self-defense shout out that shows that having the means and opportunity and will to defend oneself is a good thing. For those of you who may be listening and who haven't listened to the show before, anytime that I do these self-defense shout-outs, I am not celebrating someone's death, even a bad guy. I'm celebrating the continued life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the good guy who had the means, opportunity, and will to defend themselves. Yeah, Roosted says, what kind of carjacker waits for you to check your trunk? Yeah, I don't know how. Maybe she snatched her keys out of there as she was exiting the car. I don't know. But that I was kind of wondering about that myself. If I'm trying to carjack somebody, I'm not going to stick around while they get something out of their trunk.
Well, yeah, but I mean, your trunk releases right next to your foot there. On some cars. So you could, as you dive out the door, he thinks you're just going out the door. You pull the latch and then you run back before he gets a chance to move over and take control.
Yep. Rich White says, Roosted, the fact that he hid in a Supercuts restroom should answer that question. Yeah, I guess that's what kind of carjacker he was. A stupid one. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm glad that you all stopped by to be part of this conversation. Let me go through the panel here. Matt, do you have anything you'd like to leave as parting wisdom or a plug or anything for us?
Let's see. There's this old proverb that says the man who runs in front of a car will be tired, and the man who runs behind a car will be exhausted. And I think that applies in everyday life, and I think you should think about it.
Words of wisdom. Squib, anything you want to add? Squib. Apparently Squib is otherwise occupied. So I will go ahead and just again remind that next week there will not be a Right of the People show. You will always have the Right of the People, but you won't have my show. I will be going on a backpacking trip starting next Friday, so I will not be here to do this. I will not have cell service where I'm at, so I won't even be able to live stream anything from my phone. If I happen to catch some cell service on a hilltop or something, I might go live for a little bit, but I wouldn't count on it.
You will be missed.
Well, hopefully. I don't want to be hit. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
That's Tuesday night.
Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock.
Yep. Do you have anything you'd like to add as parting wisdom here, Squib?
I was being accused of being quiet until I started talking. So I guess what's true at work is true on the interwebs. The only thing I can think of is see me or hear me tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time on what is arguably the best show on Gun Channel's Caliber Corner.
Outstanding. And I would like to leave this with, given the topics some of the topics we've talked to today and the theme of government overreach, it is, it adds weight to the message I always leave us with, in that you have to be involved. You have to be part of the political process, not necessarily jumping on a microphone, not necessarily reaching into your wallet, although those two things are important. But you must, and this is something anybody can do, you must call your congressman, call your senators, let your elected representatives know from the state and local level all the way up to the federal level what your feelings are on the Second Amendment. They should never have any doubt what you think. Call, write, email, fax, telegraph, heliograph, semaphore, smoke signals, carrier pigeon, send a damn courier, send a runner. I don't care what you do. Use a tom-toms. I don't care. Let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. We'll see you guys on the next one.